Good evening and thank you for joining us for KREM News 10 at 10 tonight, where we give you more news in less time. Let's get started. An FDA medical panel has recommended both Moderna and Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccines for young children.
It's a population that has been much less affected than the older populations, particularly the oldest population, but one nonetheless has also been affected. We have to be careful that we don't become numb to the number of pediatric deaths because of the overwhelming number of older deaths here.
CDC says more than 440 children ages 4 and under have died from COVID during the pandemic, and hospitalizations among that age group have risen during the Omicron surge. Pfizer says its 3-shot series is 80% effective in preventing symptomatic infections in young children. The CDC still has to weigh in, though. If the vaccine does get final approval, it would likely become available sometime next week. It is unclear how much demand there is for this youngest age group. Only 29% of children under 12 have been vaccinated since they became eligible for the Pfizer shot back in November. One local pediatrician we talked to today about the importance of getting the COVID vaccine approved for children.
I think a lot of these kids still are at high risk because they are the younger population, and typically with most of our illnesses it's either the elderly or the very young who don't fight off these infections well. And so still the under 5 are at risk of increased hospitalization and death from COVID.
So here are the next steps. On Saturday, the CDC panel will meet to decide on a formal recommendation for the vaccine, and they could be available as early as Monday. Well, state and local health officials say we are in the biggest COVID wave since the Omicron wave last winter. While hospitalizations are nowhere near where they were during that wave, cases are up statewide. But with more people testing at home rather than at community sites, can health officials get an accurate grasp on the number of cases in the community? I went to the experts to verify. To verify the answer to this question, I went to Mark Springer, the program manager for the Communicable Disease Program for the Spokane Regional Health District, and Lacey Fehrenbach, the Deputy Secretary for Prevention, Safety, and Health at the Washington State Department of Health. With more people testing at home, does that make it more difficult for, like, let's say, the county or the state to track COVID cases right now?
With the influx of at-home testing, both at the state and county level, there likely is an underreporting of COVID cases.
It does impact the numbers that we report on our website.
Both Mark and Lacey agree with more people testing at home, health officials are seeing fewer cases reported to them. In fact, Fehrenbach says the state estimates the number of cases reported to them represents just 15% of the active COVID cases in the state. And Springer says it's a similar figure in Spokane County.
Maybe 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7 cases that's reported, compared to what's out there in the community.
But both also agree that doesn't mean that health officials aren't getting an accurate gauge of COVID spread in the community. More than 2 years into the pandemic, epidemiologists have shifted how they track COVID spread beyond just testing.
The other thing that we look at, and this is a newer type of surveillance for COVID-19 that started in the fall and has expanded across Washington state, is wastewater surveillance. And that does help us see a trend in disease.
Both say while cases are up significantly in recent months and the number of people being hospitalized with COVID is once again increasing, there are some positive signs with this most recent wave.
The number of people and the rate of people who are dying is lower than almost any prior wave and even the whole pandemic.
So we can verify that yes, with the increase in at-home testing, fewer cases are being reported to health officials. But they stress they are still able to accurately track COVID spread. And both Springer and Fehrenbach say COVID's not over and they want people to get vaccinated. They say while breakthrough cases do happen, if you're vaccinated, you are significantly less likely to become really sick from COVID. Now to our night beat with a quick look at today's top stories. 31 men connected to a hate group were arrested on Saturday in Coeur d'Alene, accused of planning to riot in downtown near where a pride rally was underway. However, this isn't an isolated incident. Throughout the entire country, there has been more targeted hate towards the LGBTQ community.
It's showing up, a lot of places around the country. It's not geographically localized. These are not necessarily Republican communities where it's showing up. And that's what's frightening is.
We know through court documents that members of this hate group went to Coeur d'Alene to raise a voice against, quote, LGBTQ plus morals. And it's not the first time hate groups have targeted pride events. The Southern Poverty Law Center says anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric is just becoming more violent as extremists are bringing their actions to the streets across the country. Coming up in just about 10 minutes, we'll share more on what others are saying about this issue and how the LGBTQ community is reacting to it. And an update for you tonight, Spokane police have identified and arrested Daniel McGee as the suspect who they say sexually assaulted a woman in North Spokane early yesterday morning. Detectives say they've established probable cause for first-degree rape and first-degree kidnapping charges. Police say McGee has 22 prior felony convictions. Meanwhile, a man was stabbed with a sword at a home in north central Spokane following what court documents describe as a disagreement over a portable speaker of all things. According to court documents, the owner of the speaker, Thomas Torngren, accused the victim of taking that speaker but then later found it. And later the victim woke up with Torngren holding what court documents describe as a katana sword and stabbed the victim in the stomach. The victim had to have surgery for a lacerated liver. Torngren was ultimately booked into the Spokane County Jail on a charge of first-degree assault. And that was your Night Beat. To learn more about any of these stories, just text us the word night to 509-448-2000 and we'll send them directly to your phone. Shocking images out of Montana this week. Eyewitness video showed a car getting hit by falling rocks driving through Yellowstone National Park as heavy rain is causing rock slides and flooding all across the state at a level never seen before.
There was no place for food. Restaurants are closed. You can't do anything without water and electric. So we went up to the American Red Cross place. They had a generator and food. And again, this is stuff I see on TV. I'm the one that donates. I'm not the one that uses the services.
Well, tonight cleanup is underway across the state. Neighbors and volunteer contractors have begun the process of clearing homes that were damaged by the floodwaters. The flooding was caused by heavy rain and from rapid snowmelt filling the Yellowstone River. The flooding in Yellowstone National Park tore out bridges, even swept away homes. Parts of Yellowstone may stay closed for a substantial length of time, according to officials, after all the flooding. All right, let's transition to weather here locally. After several rainy days, we finally enjoyed some sunshine today. Let's get straight to Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Legoo. Jeremy, we know the rain subsided today, but is there still a flooding risk that exists?
Yeah, it kind of actually shifts as we get into the day tomorrow. It's a bit of a different flood threat, so let's talk about it. Right now, not sitting too bad, 61 degrees here in Spokane, so it's still rather mild outside just after the sun went down. Now, if you look around, we have expired some of those flood advisories and warnings. Here's the deal. We still have a flood warning in place for the Pend Oreille River just downstream of Albany Falls. That's minor flooding near St. Joe as well. But as you look your way out to the west, that's where we encounter more significant threats of flooding as we get into the day tomorrow. Basically, the western edge of this green shaded area, the Okanagan Highlands, looking at that potential as we get a round of moisture that kind of sweeps the region as we move through the day tomorrow. All that's in the morning. Starts pre-dawn, and those isolated showers and heavy rain out of those storms will persist through about the middle part of the day. Now, the biggest threat there is the same area getting hit repeatedly, and with burn scars, the ground becomes hydrophobic, so all that water runs off and creates flood threat, even from fires that happened years ago. Overnight, we fall down into the low 50s here in Spokane. By tomorrow afternoon, it's mostly cloudy skies and temps climbing into the 70s.
All right, Jeremy, thank you very much. And that was your KREM 2 News 10 at 10, where you get more news in less time. But don't go to bed just yet. After the break, more details in the arrest of 31 men tied to a national hate group, how the men were bailed out of jail by one man, at least several of them. We're back in just 90 seconds.